Hello everyone, this is Gary and today we're looking at 5 tips for managers on difficult conversations. Now I know how it is, you're a manager of a team or a department, maybe you're running your own business, but from time to time there will be difficult conversations you need to have with the people that work with you or work for you. And how do you manage those? Well, that is what this video is all about. We'll be looking at a couple of things. The first one is the business of preparation, getting ready for that meeting. Next we'll be looking at the issue of timing, to get the timing right on that, preferably as soon as issues arise, but if not, you've got to get the timing right when things are right, when the temperature perhaps has cooled. The third thing, if you have an HR department, human resources, is how essential it is to involve them. They may not need to be present, but they need to be involved in the process because it will affect what comes next, and that next step may well involve disciplinary processes among other things, and managing the employment issues that come out of that is critical you involve HR. Other couple of issues I want to cover is the need to stay focused. A difficult conversation can often get diverted away onto other issues, and how do you stay focused and keep it on track and try to move it towards what is your preferred outcome? Although there's never any certainty about it, you can at least manage the process as best you can in the circumstance to a preferred exit plan. And then as part of that, how do you bring the whole thing to a close? And if there are issues and the person who is with you is going to continue working with you, how do you manage the relationship with them, and how do you manage the outcome of that discussion? Among other things, through smart actions. So basically, having given you an outline of what's coming, I think it's probably best that we just get into it. Okay, so let's get into it. We're looking at 5 tips for managers on difficult conversations. And these are things that happen a lot if you're a manager. There will be issues you have to deal with, and there are difficult conversations you need to have. And this is how to manage them. My tip, as always, is to read the small print. So the first tip is, well, it's the 3 things as always: prepare, prepare, prepare. You have to prepare and self-rehearse the start of that difficult conversation. Have it in your mind how you're going to start that conversation and how you're going to set the tone for that conversation. You've got to set the tone with your opening. So that's why you have to prepare, and that's why you have to self-rehearse. And finally, you've got to have in mind an outcome and an exit plan. Now, that may not be the outcome that occurs, and it may not be the exit plan that you will follow, but you need to have prepared one so that one way or another you can help the conversation move in the right direction, and you can adapt. You can adapt to your outcome that you've prepared, and you can adapt the exit plan that you've prepared. You can adapt them to the circumstances as they arise. But you won't be able to do that if you have not prepared in the first place. So preparation is the key to this. The next tip is timing is everything. So it's better if you can deal with the issues as they arise, and that will help to avoid those difficult conversations. But if that has not been possible, well, you've got to schedule it for the next available date. Sometimes the issues are just too hot to handle at the moment, and again, that's another good reason to schedule them. But you need to schedule those meetings for the next available date. In other words, do not let it fester or become stale. But if it's heated, yes, you've got to let it cool. But don't let it become stale or fester, because when you finally have the conversation, it just won't have the same value or the same meaning, or indeed the same outcome. And as far as the other parties of that conversation is concerned, it will be too cold. So deal with it as it arises, and if that's not possible, schedule it for the next available date. So the third thing is HR is essential. HR, I mean human resources. Your human resources, your HR department are essential in this process if it's a difficult conversation. Now, HR may not need to be present, but you must, and I underline that, you must involve them, because there are often issues that are outside the scope of what you consider to be a difficult conversation, and at the very least you need to talk to HR to make sure that if there are those kind of issues, you are dealing with them appropriately, because you've got to follow their processes closely, especially in the context of disciplinary issues. Process is critical to a successful outcome, particularly in those disciplinary areas. That is why you must involve HR. And if they're not there, you've got to report back the outcome for its records. It's important that you stay with HR through the process and that you get feedback from them on how it is progressing. HR is essential on all difficult conversations. So, the next tip is to stay focused in that difficult conversation. Find an appropriate location for the meeting, yes, but don't let it be about you. So, if the other party of the conversation starts saying, well, it's really all your fault, not mine, you have to avoid it being about you. You have to avoid being defensive. You've got to try and redirect the conversation. Bring it back to what you prepared right at the outset, and bring it back to the reason for the meeting. And go back and restate the reason why you are meeting. In other words, it's not about you, but it's about the other party to that conversation and the reason that has given rise to that difficult conversation in the first place. And finally then, this last tip, yes, you've got to bring it all to a close. So you need to keep in mind that desired outcome we mentioned at the beginning, and you've got to keep in mind the options that are available to you. Now, in a difficult conversation, it may be training, it may be disciplinary steps, it may be counselling, but you need to keep those in mind during the course of the conversation. And you've got to aim to settle an action plan. So part of your exit route is that there will be an action plan, and the objectives, the goals, and particularly the steps to be taken in that action plan, the clue is in the title, the actions have to be SMART. In other words, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timed. And if you can bring it to a close in that way, well, dealing with a difficult conversation is as easy as that. Okay, so that was 5 tips for managers on difficult conversations. And I hope that you now have enough information to have a better idea about how to manage them. If you're still with me, thanks very much for watching so far. And in case you need to make some final notes, here's a quick summary of what we covered. The first thing really was that preparation was key to all of this. You may have to self-rehearse the start of the conversation because you need to set the tone with your opening, and you don't want it to get off to an awkward or difficult start. You've got to set the agenda, if you like, and set the direction of the conversation. We also looked at the fact that timing is quite important. It's best to deal with issues as they arise, but sometimes the conversations are just too heated and you've got to come back to them when things have cooled. You do that as soon as you can. The next thing was how important the human resources departments are if you've got one, and if you do have an HR department, it is essential that you involve them. Often these difficult conversations will lead to good outcomes where you have a solution, in which case you simply report back, and you may not need to involve HR in the meetings themselves, but sometimes they are going to lead to disciplinary procedures, and it's vital you follow those within your firm. The next couple of things we looked at was the need to stay focused. In difficult conversations, it's very easy to get railroaded or just simply diverted away from the key issues. So we talked about how to stay focused, and finally how to bring it to a close. And that if it's a matter where there is a successful outcome and you've got a way forward, well, you need to start to map out how that will look, and that involves, among other things, setting smart actions. And if you can do all of those things and you follow those 5 tips, well, dealing with difficult conversations is as easy as that. Now, if you like this video, please can you mark it as a like, and if you want more videos like this, well then please subscribe. Apart from that, all that is left to say is thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.